It is July 1518 in the city of Strasbourg, a busy, crowded city in what is now France. A woman steps out of her front door and begins to dance. There is no music, there is no celebration, there is no reason. She simply starts moving her feet, swaying her body, twisting and turning in the narrow street outside her home. Witnesses describe her expression not as joy, but as something closer to anguish. She dances for hours, then she dances through the night. When the sun rises the next morning, she is still going, her shoes soaked in blood, her face contorted, her body convulsing in rhythmic spasms that she seems completely unable to stop. 4 days pass, a week, she cannot stop, and then, one by one, other people in the city begin to join her. They did not choose to dance, they could not stop. And by August of 1518, 400 people were dancing through the streets of Strasbourg in a frenzy that killed dozens of them, and that historians, scientists, and neurologists have never been able to fully explain. This is the true documented story of the dancing plague, and it is just the beginning. The woman's name was Frau Trophea. She was an ordinary resident of Strasbourg with no known history of mental illness, no apparent grievance, no visible reason to step outside and begin dancing on a warm July morning. The people of Strasbourg in 1518 were experiencing acute distress after a succession of appalling harvests, the highest grain prices for over a generation, the arrival of syphilis, and the recurrence of old killers like leprosy and plague. The city was under enormous collective stress. And Frau Trophea danced and danced and danced, and then the city danced with her. Stunned and puzzled, doctors proclaimed this affliction was caused by fever and recommended the dancers keep dancing until their fevers were gone. The city tried to help, constructing a dance stage and bringing in a band and professional dancers to entertain the victims during their uncontrollable gyrations. Think about that for a moment. The medical response to people dancing themselves to death was to provide them with better music. It did not help. People began collapsing from exhaustion in the July heat. Some had heart attacks, some simply did not get back up. The plague continued for weeks, and then, as suddenly and inexplicably as it had started, it stopped. Frau Trophea and the other survivors simply ceased dancing one day. No treatment, no intervention, no explanation, just stop. Yahoo, before we go further, if this story is making your jaw drop, hit that subscribe button on screen right now and turn on notifications. We find these extraordinary true stories every single day, and you will not want to miss what is coming next. But Strasbourg in 1518 was not an isolated incident, not even close. On January 30th, 1962, at a small boarding school near the village of Kashasha in what was then Tanganyika, now Tanzania, three girls began to laugh. Not a giggle, not a chuckle, uncontrollable, convulsive, unstoppable laughter. Within hours, it had spread. Within days, as many as 95 of the 159 students were stricken with uncontrollable laughter, sometimes interspersed with uncontrollable crying. The school was closed, but closing the school did not stop the laughter. It spread to the surrounding villages. Months later, another outbreak occurred affecting 217 people. The laughter, if you can call it that, lasted for up to 16 days in some individuals. It was not funny, it was terrifying. Extensive research was done, including looking for toxic substances, thorough medical exams, and examination of food and water sources. Nothing was found that could explain the outbreak. The cause remains officially unknown to this day. Big think plus two. And then there is the case that sits somewhere between the dancing plague and the laughing epidemic, and is perhaps the most disturbing of all three. In September 1944, residents of Mattoon, Illinois, were thrown into a panic when reports emerged that a mysterious prowler was spraying a sweet smelling toxic gas through people's windows at night, causing nausea, paralysis, and vomiting across the town. The local newspaper ran dramatic front page coverage of what it called a mad gasser, and within days, new reports flooded in from across the community. Investigators found no evidence of any gas or perpetrator. People were genuinely paralyzed, genuinely vomiting, genuinely unable to move their legs. And yet there was nothing there. No gas, no prowler, no chemical, no cause. Just fear, spreading from person to person through a community until it manifested as real, measurable, physical symptoms in people who had no idea they were experiencing anything other than a genuine attack. Mental floss. These three cases, the dancing plague of 1518, the Tanganyika laughing epidemic of 1962, and the mad gasser of Mattoon in 1944 are among the most studied and most baffling examples of a phenomenon that scientists call mass psychogenic illness. The formal definition is straightforward: a condition where physical symptoms spread through a group of people with no identifiable biological cause. The reality is considerably harder to explain because the symptoms are real, the paralysis is real, the laughter is real, the bleeding feet of the dancers of Strasbourg were real. Whatever is happening in the brains and bodies of the people affected, it is not imaginary, it is not faked, it is happening. The science just cannot tell us why. What researchers have identified is a pattern. The affected groups tend to be people in subordinate positions: students, factory workers, soldiers, young women in restrictive communities. The symptoms emerge during periods of heightened stress and social tension. Strasbourg in 1518 was a city under extraordinary pressure. The boarding school in Tanganyika was a highly controlled environment, far from home. Mattoon in 1944 was a wartime community with husbands and sons overseas and fear woven into the fabric of daily life. The mind, it seems, has a threshold, and when enough people in close proximity cross it at the same time, something breaks loose. Something that can spread like a virus, manifest as physical symptoms, and resist every rational intervention thrown at it. Big Think. The most recent documented case occurred in 2019 when dozens of students at a school in Malaysia fell ill with screaming fits and apparent seizures. Teachers reported that students claimed to see dark figures and supernatural entities. Investigations found no medical cause. Not in 1518, not in the distant past, 2019. In a world of smartphones and MRI scanners and the accumulated medical knowledge of centuries, a group of young people in a school began screaming at things that were not there, and science could not explain why. Big think mass hysteria is not a relic, it is not a medieval curiosity. It is something that lives inside the architecture of human psychology, waiting for the right conditions of stress and proximity and fear. And when those conditions arrive, as they have in every century of recorded human history, it does not matter how educated you are, or how rational, or how certain you are that you would never be affected. Because the people of Strasbourg thought the same thing right up until the moment they started dancing. We cover the most mind blowing true stories from around the world every single week. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because you will not want to miss what is coming next. See you in the next one.